Well, the great thing about the back is you get someone coming in and they got back pain that no one's been able to help them with, or and now they got some ridiculous leg pain, and within a single visit, you can significantly impact their pain if you know what you're doing. So that's kind of another big thing right now, especially with ACL rehab, is what's called neurocognitive reaction training, and that's occupying the brain while doing like a sport.
I'm going to do everything right not to tear my ACL. What are exercises or even things that you do at your clinic that they can do that they can take home with them? Don't forget to press that subscribe button, smash the like button, give us a thumbs up.
Versus someone comes in with shoulder pain, most likely they probably have a rotator cuff sprain or tear, and you're trying to tell them it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks of doing some strengthening, and you're not going to see any immediate results. And so what am I talking about?
The how you landed, how you land, but what their legs, you called it a
Valgus.
Yeah, okay, yeah, go back to that. Yeah. Cut you off.
Yeah, it's hard to just kind of talk about abstractly, because I'm a big proponent of if you're going to claim to be an expert, you better prove it, and it's just not enough to just talk about it. And so, what's the best way to prove that other than get great results is to get some of these certifications.
Can we talk about this board certification, what it means, why it is unique? Like, I think we need to, I think we need to like, and Corey's a humble guy, but
Sure.
we need, I think we need people to know like the information that Corey's giving, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
take this serious.
Yeah. So my first one was a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and so I started getting down the specialty in this certification, this McKinsey certification. It's called certified, mechanical diagnosis and treatment. Manual therapy. There's a lot of manual techniques. There's a lot of manual gurus out there. The big one, the first big one. I mean, those are all big, and those are all hard to get. You see a ton of those out there, but is more of the board certified orthopedic specialty one. And so about 8% of all physical therapy therapists in the country have this certification, and I think 8% of all physical therapists have the OCS. 1% have the SCS, which I just got, and there's like a 0.5% of all therapists that have both of them combined. So
In the entire country.
FarmBoys podcast, take 3. We're here today with Doctor of Physical Therapy, good friend, and board certified sports specialist, Corey Rasmussen of Physical Therapy Specialists of Idaho. Thank you, Corey, for coming on by.
Thanks, Chris, for having me on. So Southeast Idaho's board certified sports specialist.
We have an expert here, and something that we always want on this podcast is to bring in diversity of folks that do different things. And one of the cool things about you, Corey, is you're an Idaho farm boy yourself. So Logan and I, as we've spoken about in previous podcasts, grew up on a farm in Idaho, and obviously that helped mold us and change us. So getting right into things, how did the farm mold you, affect you, and did it have any bearing on your decision to go into physical therapy and become a doctor of it?
You can't replace growing up on the farm for developing a good work ethic. I mean, that teaches you the ultimate work ethic from getting started early while everybody else is, in bed dreaming. You're out there accomplishing your dreams kind of deal. And so getting up early consistently, day in and day out, to get the water moved, whatever it needs to be done, jump in the tractor. And, when you're a son of a farmer, you don't get the good jobs. You get the crap jobs, right? You guys have talked about that. But it learns you to be grateful for those opportunities, and it teaches you that you got to do the grunt work to get, to the top if you want to. So those experiences on the farm, I think, is what molded me into someone who is just passionate about work and enjoys getting up early and enjoys getting after it and likes to do work.
What kind of crops?
Mostly spuds. My dad did a spuds. He did alfalfa and he did grain table.
And then how did you irrigate? Was it flood irrigation or was it?
No, we didn't do flood. I helped Chris out a couple of times. Helped mostly wash. I tried. I couldn't get it. I guess I was spoiled. I had hand lines. I don't know. We had hand lines and wheel lines. that I would do and trade off each summer.
The passion for people's health, wellness, that kind of stuff. Did any of that come from the farm? Was that from college? And the work ethic from the farm is what transitioned over? I guess tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't say for certain when I started to develop a passion for the medical field. I feel like it was in kind of my high school years. I wanted to possibly become a doctor, but I realized I'm not a fan of blood and guts and didn't really know for sure about a lot of options. And then I needed some physical therapy, actually, I think around 10th grade. And so I got exposed to that. I started ISU and I knew they had a pretty good physical therapy program and they were working on transitioning it to a doctor program. So I really had nothing to do but go to school and work out. So I worked out a ton. I had an unlimited food plan, cafeteria. So I just bulked up and worked, became medical, exercise, blends together, seems like doctorate opportunity.
So is it true when people talk about you love what you do in the medical field, but you have to deal with things like insurance? It, is insurance really as bad as everyone says? Do we need comprehensive health care? I mean, what's your view on that? Is it just a pain in the butt to deal with insurance? Does it really keep people from getting healthy, getting better? What's your view on insurance?
Yeah, insurance is a pain in the butt. I think I'll go to conferences and stuff, and every state has it a little bit differently. I mean, for the most part, over in Idaho, um, we have it better than.
Is that because of state laws?
For the most part, is the way I understand. So, but yeah, in a nutshell, it's getting worse and worse. I mean, the plans that people are paying out the wazoo for are getting less and less. They're going from 30 visit plans. It doesn't matter if you're injured, multiple times a year. You got 30 visits for the year. Now it's down to 20. Now, not only is it down to 20, but now you have to justify authorization to use those 20. So even though you have 20 visits that you pay for, we have to try to request and prove that you need to use those. And so even though we've got a doctor's degree, we're trying to prove to someone who has no idea why they need to be coming, or maybe so they authorize us. So they'll only authorize like 8 at most, right off. And you're like, okay, well that gets us about maybe half the way there, maybe 3/4 of the way there. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to put in a request for 6 more, and they say, oh, okay, you don't get 6 more, you get 4 more, even though they've got 12 more visits that they're paying for. That it doesn't matter. And that's not all insurances, but that's those. And then there's the, okay, we charge this much for our time, but we're going to write off and we'll pay you 50% of that. And then there's insurances that are worse than that. Look, we don't care what you do. We're only going to pay you $70. And so that is problematic because that's United Healthcare, and that's the biggest insurance company around. And so what that does is it makes providers want to cut the treatment short. Okay, because I'm losing money if I do a full hour treatment, so I'm going to cut it down to a half hour to make it worth it. Well, there's not a lot you can do effectively in a half hour, in my opinion.
And knowing you as well on this front, you want to avoid injuries. You want preventative health care. Is our healthcare system now today, or the insurance system, set up to be preventative? Because what you said is some of these, like our government health cares, won't allow them to come straight to you when others will. But couldn't patients ideally come straight to a physical therapist like yourself to prevent anything major happening in the future?
Yeah, right. What's the saying? Like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Um, they talk about it, but there's no real action being done. If anything, it's still going the opposite direction. And yeah, the insurance programs aren't. You have to justify that there's still an impairment and that there's still functional limitations that justify them still coming to therapy.
What do you find is the biggest preventable issue that you could say, hey, you would just do this and let physical therapists do their job here, this wouldn't happen anymore?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think off the top of my head, I would say for people that are 30, 40s and above, back injuries, and I think in the younger population, knee injuries, I think, are the most preventable. I mean, that brings me to a subject that I wanted to talk to you about, because you've had ACL surgery. You had it when you were a kid multiple times. Now, when I was in high school, I think you are the only one I knew that had an ACL injury. It'd be interesting to ask Scott, someone else we went to high school with. I don't know about Logan if you had some experience there, but everybody's tearing their ACL these days. And it wasn't a thing back then. I mean, we still had ACLs. We were still playing sports at a high level. We just weren't tearing. It's not like we were playing through torn ACLs.
That's so. Are you seeing it across like all age groups? Like, and I'm thinking we're talking kids here, right?
We're talking all age groups from 13 to definitely, 18 in college. Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, we're seeing 13 and 15-year-olds with torn ACLs, but still, I mean, just
Girls or boys?
so many high schools. Mostly females. It's going to be predominantly, but we're seeing boys too.
So, I mean, one of the questions I would have is, with all the club sports and all the everything that's going on, like, do you think that's partly because of just like they're playing so much that maybe they don't get proper time to recover or, train outside of the games? I know part of it with club sports is there's a lot of games and not very much like practice or training, right? To get stronger. The other one that would be interesting to look into is just like overall diet. Like, how does the nutrition part play into it? And are kids eating worse? Like, I know growing up on the farm, it's probably cliche for Idaho, but it was like meat and potatoes, baby. We had beef cows. We actually didn't grow potatoes, but my grandpa grew potatoes. But I mean, of course, potatoes were everywhere, so potatoes were easy to come by. But beef I ate growing up was the best. Actually, when I like left the house and had beef from like the grocery store, I was kind of honestly like, what is this greasy mess? Like, beef was like so good, so lean. Costco makes things kind of easy, I guess.
Right?
Yeah, but
So, my thoughts on this whole deal, I think there's a lot of things to unpack. I think part of it is, there's so much travel clubs, there's so much ongoing competition. So it's just more exposure for one. There's more opportunities to get hurt. There's less time to properly train. But I also kind of wonder if at an earlier age, a lot of school programs have done away with the physical education classes. So there's no conditioning leading up into these. Now that they just go right into competition, they go from at least doing calisthenics and doing different things and help develop, your muscles at an early age appropriately exercises. And now, especially the females who just don't have that strength in their hips and in their quads that create good knee alignment.
that's an interesting thought. I just started reading a book, super really good book. It's called The Anxious Generation, and the book is based on like anxiety, depression, why kids these days like face so much of some of these challenges.
Yeah.
And it's in a way, I mean, it's kind of foreign for a little bit for me. I mean, I get it, right? Like, the book goes into how the rise of the smartphone, and they kind of use like 2010 as like a time when like I think that's when smartphones are available. You've got social media on smartphones, and all of a sudden you've got something that kids are taking around nonstop with them, and they have full access to the internet. And the amount of kids that are using it, right, and using social media. But it talks about how before that it was a heavy like, hey, you need to play, you need to go outside, you need to get like sometimes even with my own kids now, I mean, we try to limit like gaming, phones, that kind of thing.
My kids for that.
So when you talk about knee alignment, what are you looking for when you like explain just a little bit when you're talking about what you're talking about there, so maybe people understand a little bit. And then just very simple, like what is the base, like what are you teaching with jump landing?
Yeah, good question. So I wish I had the graphic in front of me. There's a really iconic picture of actually Robert Griffin III when he was at Combine doing a jump landing drill, and he was fit, right? He was a stud in college, but he had horrible jump landing mechanics, and they showed his. So the knee alignment that we're talking about is when you have weak hips, and when you load up to jump or when you land, your knees are going to go into what we call a valgus angle, meaning kind of knock knees. Yep, they start to come together.
Okay, hold on. Don't lose that thought.
Puts a strain on the MCL, and then that also puts the ACL at risk.
You said hips. Anybody who watches this is going to say, what the hell is he talking about? Hips.
Right.
How can hips affect my knees? Explain that part before you go into the angles and crap.
So, I mean, hips are one of the most neglected things, right? Especially the sides of your hips, because, people, especially with sports, they want to just train in the sagittal plane. They want to do squats. They want to do deadlifts. They want to do that stuff. Yeah, you get some secondary involvement of your hips, but you're not getting a lot of the hip abductors, which are going to control. So if you think of your hip abductors, they're going to control your femur, whether your femur goes in or if your femur is going to stay straight and down alignment. So that they're sitting up here controlling that angle. And so they're going to really actually control the whole alignment of the knee.
Are you saying, Corey, all along, I need to get this whole time I've been making fun of those guys that get on the leg smash machine and the leg out machine?
Yeah. So there's a joke. You just don't make eye contact, you guys, when they're doing that. But yeah, you need to get on that.
But what other like exercises help with the hip?
Yeah. So they've done several studies. They're called EMG studies, where they measure the muscle activity during certain exercises. And there's been a few of them out, but some of the top ones, actually, one of them is a single leg squat. So you're not really bound. You have that one leg in the air. So your other hip that's doing the squat also has to balance your pelvis out as you go through this squat. So a lot of EMG activity in both the glute med and the glute max.
So same type of thing, just a lot lighter weight, single leg squat.
So that would be just body weight. Yeah.
Oh, just body weight?
On that one. Yep. Almost like a pistol squat.
What about the one where you put the bar over your pelvis and you go down and thrust?
So those hip thrusters or glute thrusters, those are popular. Those are good for your glute max, which does have some involvement in making sure it's controlling the knee and decelerating the knee, but probably not as advantageous as the glute med for controlling knee valgus angles. So that particular exercise, so they picked a lot of exercises. That one wasn't actually, different versions of that, because there's like bridges and different versions of bridges that just don't have the bar across your hip. Those are very common ones that people do. But like a side plank while doing some hip abduction or a side leg raise, that was one of the high. That was probably the second.
Dang.
That was the second highest.
What was that guy, Simmons?
So yeah.
Oh, you mean
Richard Simmons?
Rest his soul, yeah. So doing those have a lot of hip EMG activity, but then you're going to want to do like some athletic movements as well, having some like some of the bands around your ankles and doing some side shuffling. But instead of like in basketball where your toes are pointing where you're going, you got to keep your toes facing forward, and you got to maintain a good knee alignment, and you're working your hips and clamshells and lots of good stuff like that.
What about lunges?
Lunges are good too, yeah. Lunges, and then even adding like a medicine ball with rotational twist helps get more into it as well. So those are all good ones as well.
Okay. So when you're saying the jump landing, going back to that, and you were talking about Robert Griffin, it's basically the knees, the hips aren't strong enough, knees are coming in and kind of knocking. So after doing that multiple times, I would imagine you're getting everything tired, right, through physical exercise, and so then your chance of actually those muscles or that support that is there giving out or getting to a point where your ACL or your one of the other.
Yeah, so they might, they might come in on your first few jumps, but after fatigue, this angle now is now this angle, and then pretty soon it's just giving way, and now you're torn your MCL and your ACL. And part of it is, I just want to make sure that some of it isn't just pure muscle strength alone, but a neuromuscular component, just being trained how to do it. Like you may have like the strength to do good at golf swing, but you just don't have the mechanics down. And sometimes we take jumping for granted, that there is a right and a wrong way to do some jumping. And so that doesn't get taught, it's just kind of innate. And so that's one thing that we need to work on, and that's a big thing with ACL prevention programs.
So are you just looking at, I mean, if a person, let's say, is jumping shoulder width apart and you're coming down, like your foundation should be strong, there's no like this, knees coming in, or I mean, it's just the right form of jumping and then landing in that good position or posture.
Yeah. Nice soft landings, so they're absorbing it well and they're not landing really flagged, because that's how other people get in trouble, is they land with like a locked knee or stiff. They don't have the quad strength in that case to absorb that.
So I cut you off. Go back and explain that, because I interrupted you because I wanted to touch on hips, because I couldn't believe that. I've had knee replacement. I've had 12 surgeries between my two legs. Nobody's ever brought up hips, not one time.
You know what they say?
Sorry.
Don't lie.
Hips don't lie. Shakira.
She was onto something.
Yeah, she was. So okay. But like I said, I was fascinated by the hips. I would have thought somebody would have told me, like my buddy, who's a physical therapist, since I've torn my ACL, and he's never brought up hips to me. So that kind of got me. Yeah. So talk about that angle and your fancy words and stuff. No, you were doing that, and I interrupted you.
So what am I talking about?
The how you landed, how you land, but what their legs, you called it a
valgus.
Yeah, okay, yeah, go back to that. Yeah. I cut you off.
Yeah. It's hard to just kind of talk about abstractly. It's better obviously with some imagery. But yeah, if you
I can add that.
if your knee, is buckling in, we call that a valgus angle. If your knee is bow-legged, it's called a varus angle. You'll see varus on like some arthritic knees. You'll see valgus on arthritic knees. Usually with jump landing and ACL turns, the valgus angle that does it. And so with sports such as basketball, that's usually where the injury occurs. Is they go up for a rebound, they come down, and then that knee goes away, and they tear their ACL. So you need your hips kind of control the side-to-side motion, but you're going to need your quad and your hamstrings to control forward and back. And so if those ratios aren't accurate, then you're not going to be able to shut that down, and then that tibia will continue to progress forward, and then it'll result in another ACL.
So here's what everybody wants to know who's going to listen to this and say, my first thought is, I don't have kids anymore or anything. Well, no, not true, whatever. People have kids are going to say, and maybe you've already said it, maybe the exercises you listed are what they need to do, but what can somebody who has a young boy, a young girl, or even a high schooler, or even a college person do to say, I am going to do this, and I am going to not be guaranteed, but pretty darn close that I'm going to do everything right, not to tear my ACL? What are exercises, or even?
Yeah, well, first things first, take a look, see if you got a problem. And so I would challenge you, get in front of a mirror. You need to do just a regular functional squat. See if you can break 90 without your knees kind of bowing in. I would also, you could do it with a chair, where you do a single leg squat, lower yourself slowly down to the chair, and see how much that knee, dives to the inside there, and take a look at yourself there. Both would be good exercises to do as well, obviously. And as I alluded to, the single leg squat is one of the best ones for the glute med and the glute max, as well as your quads. And so that's a must, in my opinion. And they can do that multiple ways. They can hold on to some suspension trainers and go into a single leg squat and then come back up. Just barely touch your butt to a bench and then come back up. You could, have a ball up against the wall, and then you can do that to control that a little bit. So that's one way you can go ahead and do those single leg squats there. And then also, what I always tell people is you need to do this jump program, and you do that before you get real tired. So you want to do that before you do your strengthening exercises. But yeah, every day you're just training. It's kind of like muscle memory. You're training these muscles to do what you want them to do in a controlled environment. So when you're in an uncontrolled environment, playing, they're going to respond and react like they should. And so in therapy, they're able to focus on the jump, they're able to focus on the landing, control their knee alignment, control their landing, and then that'll spill over to on the court when they don't have time to think about it or they're preoccupied.
And things that you do at your clinic that they can do that they can take home with them?
So that's kind of another big thing right now, especially with ACL rehab, is what's called neurocognitive reaction training, and that's occupying the brain while doing like a sport, specific activity, and kind of having them react to it, increasing those or decreasing those reaction times, if you will. And so they're going to be doing some jumping activities, but at the same time, maybe you're throwing a basketball at them.
So if somebody does what you talked about, looks in the mirror, goes down, see that their leg goes out, it comes in, would you recommend that they go to see a physical therapist like yourself for preventative measures to say, hey, I noticed this, I play sports, or a parent notices, they do it with their own kid, and they say, hey, you know what? I don't want you to be at risk. Should they go see a physical therapist?
Yeah. I mean, they could talk with, if they're in a sports program, they could talk with their coaches. Well, hey, do you have an ACL prevention program, or do you have contacts that do, FIFA, soccer, whatever. I think it's called the FIFA 11. Is a program that was developed a few years ago as far as an ACL prevention, injury prevention program, and it's got a whole variety of exercises that has been found good to do in between competition, but has really cut down on ACL injuries if you run through it before a competition, like day of. And so that's easy to find on the internet, that kind of stuff there.
So it's interesting. You said that, part of the prevention is training the body training the body to do it the right way. So then when it happens, during a live event where you can't control it, the body responds in the correct way. And maybe this isn't a direct example, but I know, playing basketball, stepping on people's feet, there's been times where I've sprained my ankle bad, and it's just in the heat of the moment, it just happens, and I roll it, like stepped on somebody's foot, went completely down to the ground, but because I can feel it, I'm on somebody's foot, and it's not gonna, and there's only one thing I can do. If I fight it, it's roll. It's all my body weight's gonna
fight or flight, right? Sounds like now you're fighting.
So maybe it's not a perfect example, but in my mind, it's kind of thinking like, and it wasn't fast enough for me to actually make the decision of like, hey, don't put all your weight on that foot. You're gonna roll it. It's like my body, like I said, I've been in that situation before, and it just kind of naturally did it. And luckily I didn't. And it's happened more than once. It's the only reason.
Started to become passionate about back, spine care. That wasn't always a passion of mine. I just joined a company that was kind of their niche. I always wanted to do the athletic thing, but they're like, hey, back is the number one injury that you're going to see, so you need to be good at it. Well, you're not really good at it when you come out of school. In fact, no one really knows anything, hardly, it seems. So there's three that I looked up that I saw over in the Treasure Valley, Boise area, and then I was the only one that I saw over in the other east side of the state. So
are you currently involved with the university with any college athletics?
Yeah, we're the preferred provider that they physical therapy. I see their athletes from all the sports, from soccer, volleyball, softball, cheerleading, football, basketball, men's and women's. Track and field's a big one. On that one, I kind of you don't really think of that one as much, but man, they're hurt all the time. Hamstring strains and sprains and knee injuries all the time, through shoulders from the throwers and stuff like that. But
is there any commonality with injuries across sports, or going back to maybe I don't know, an ACL or other things, but are there certain injuries that you're seeing a lot more of from the college athletes?
The majority, by far, it's like 80% knees and then 20% wrists.
All right. So there's so much more we could talk about, and that's why I want to invite you on here every month to join us once a month. And we'd love to have questions from any viewers, anybody who wants to know things like, there's so many things we can get into with you. We definitely have to plug your rehab facility, PTSI, Physical Therapy Specialist of Idaho, in Pocatello. How many locations, website, Instagram, anything else you want to tell on here?
Yeah. So we've got 2 locations, one in Pocatello and then another one over in Chubbuck. Yeah, we've got it all. We've got, I think, 5,000 something followers on our Facebook, over 1,000 on our Instagram.
Can people go to your website and find out any information that you've shared on here, or just any information at all, general health wise, that they can say, okay, I'm going to go to your website and you can tell us what it is and find out any of that stuff?
Yeah. We're always keeping the tires on our website. We do have a newsletter, so I do a newsletter every month.
And what is the website?
That would be ptsidaho.com.
PTSidaho, all one word.com. And so can they sign up for your newsletter if they want to just sign up for it?
There's a link there to sign up for the newsletter. There's buttons for Facebook, Instagram, all those subscriptions that can be done there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. Out.